Okay. I kind of like the one we're wearing right now, so it's giving us mind powers. This is what we're kind of all about right now. Magnesium, yeah.
Secrets and everything. I don't think she's living here.
A striking woman leans against the cabin top of her sailing boat, smiling as you approach. Her green raincoat glistens with droplets. A silk scarf is tied around her throat.
Good afternoon, officers. I'm Joyce.
Joyce.
Joyce L. Messier. I represent the board of Wild Pines, the owners of the harbour. You gentlemen must be from the RCM. Nothing, honestly. I've said it to every drunk in town, and you're the first one who's responded.
Relax. She meant it in jest.
Beaton, my maiden name. I'm glad to see you here.
Like steel, there is strength there. If she wanted, she could sink her nails deep into your skin.
I was dispatched to handle a strike, not a lynching. Anything I can do to assist the RCM in this matter, I will, gladly.
That is good to hear, madame. My colleague will take the lead on this interview. I should let you know that he is recovering from an unusual medical episode. Very unusual. But I can assure you of his ultimate competency.
Like, in the end, I'm not crazy. I'm actually competent. Is that what he's saying? Because it kind of sounds like that's what he's saying. Well.
There's a trace of irony in his voice. Mischief, even. This is a tactic.
Sure as hell it is.
How interesting. I wish you a swift recovery. In the meanwhile, you have my full cooperation, and the full cooperation of the Wild Pines group. Why, yes I am. The boat? No. It is called Cordelati 19 because that's the type of sloop it is.
The word it feels strange. Such a beautiful boat deserves a proper name.
Okay. How about Cordelati 19? Why? Because it was manufactured in Revachol East by a company called Cordelati, and its hull is 19 paces long.
Boring.
She makes a point of being unromantic about it.
Why Dolores? Well, it means nothing to me. I think I'll stick with the factory name. But thank you for the suggestion. Okay. Because it was
She makes a point of being unromantic about it.
What?
Cat is attempting to help us play.
I think I'll stick with the factory name. But thank you. Okay. Because it was
She makes a point of being unromantic about
I'm just
it.
trying this again because I want to see if I can actually get her to name it something.
The X something. The X what? Very absurd. Thank you for the... Okay, because it was...
She makes a point of...
The X some... Oh, I do like the sound of that. Powerful.
She's not actually considering it. It's sarcasm.
Okay, because it was...
She makes a point of being...
The X... Thank you for the suggestion. I see the word has emotional resonance for you. It's a pleasure craft. A 19 pacer. It also happens to be rated for Category 1 racing. Though these days I mainly use it for business.
Mainly, okay.
My sloop? I like it a lot. It's the eel's hips, baby.
I'm enjoying this part of the interview. It has so little to do with the murder we're investigating.
I really do, the lieutenant thinks. Is she thrown off yet? He's looking at the woman, assessing her.
Of course there are. We're on an archipelago. How else are you supposed to get around? Yes, we are. We are on Le Caillou. We are. And the city of Revachol is on the island of Le Caillou. I haven't seen anyone else drive a souped-up Capri Kenema motor carriage either.
Actually, that motor carriage has been specially issued to serve as a patrol and pursuit vehicle.
Pursuit vehicle, huh?
It's for crossing long distances in the greater Revachol industrial harbor. It's not a toy.
Neither is this. A toy, I mean. It's a machine for crossing long distances in the Bay of Revachol, between the city and the islands.
You need to make this lady admit she's only riding around on this boat because she's rich. You have the guns and the ammo. Take this Clausen fiend down.
Going for the kill. Oh wow, that's great.
Oh my, the E word. You mean to say that it's a symbol of conspicuous consumption? That I'm a member of the ruling class?
Last wartime, baby.
Detective, may I remind you that Mrs. Messier is a professional negotiator.
Then what does that say? Does it say docking reserved for residents of Rue de Saint-Ghislain, 33A? 33A? This old proletarian haunt here. As I said, plenty of people drive boats, of all social strata.
Your synapses flesh.
Okay, it is anti-centennial. I assure you, they drove quite a hard bargain for this space. But you're right. I am a bourgeois woman, and this is my fast, lightweight, interminably bourgeois boat.
There is no shame in her voice. A touch of sadness, yes, but no shame.
Oh my, the E word. You mean to say that it's a symbol of conspicuous consumption?
Detective, may I remind you?
Then what does that say? 33A? This... Yes. Anyway. Officer, I assure you I'm a highly qualified pleasure craft operator.
That sounds weird to me for some reason, but sure, okay.
The crowns of her teeth are porcelain, white as the boat's hull as she smiles. Her nonchalance might be related to something called the Wayfarer Act, a law that says she doesn't need a license. Sly Fox, you're not aggressive enough to harass her further on this.
Good. What we do? I'm afraid I don't speak for Wild Pines as a whole. It's a giant undertaking.
There was a touch of discomfort there. She wants to merely represent.
The Pines' core competency is logistics. Container shipping, freight, that sort of thing. See those airships there, blinking? Those are the shipping side of things, and that is the terminal. Another subdivision deals with energy, oil and gas exploration, offshore platforms.
The Wild Pines Group is one of the original Revacholian Indo-tribes. Companies awarded royal monopolies by the king, the suzerain himself, centuries ago. The king is long gone, but several of the Indo-tribes remain. Saint-Baptiste, Elysium, an unknown entity known as Brightest Star.
Why, thank you. I'm not at liberty to discuss the company balance sheet, but I can tell you that last year, the company booked more than 20 billion real in revenue. $20 billion is a large number, but the conglomerate employs 72,000 people.
Yeah.
They all need to be paid. Then there are capital improvements, interest payments. A conglomerate the size of the Wild Pines is like a shark. If it stops moving, it will die. Then what becomes of those 72,000 families? They started as an exploration and cargo fleet conducting trade between the Samaran and Insulindian Isolas 250 years ago, when pine ships explored the South Seminese and charted Lomantang on behalf of the suzerain. Centuries of care, deliberation, and madness have gone into this endeavor. Vessels pass through the great unrest to re-emerge with apricots in tow. The logic of the system is totalizing. It's taken everything from its employees to build it. You know more than you let on. Certainly it helped, but most of the original Indo tribes have failed or been absorbed. To survive, Wild Pines had to grow and adapt. No suzerain did that. You mean aside from being the terminal's legal owners, who are responsible for moving 8% of the world's cargo? We built this district.
We. There it is. She owns up to it.
All the best parts of it. Rue de Saint-Ghislain, with its bastions, the plazas Meteor and Mosaic. Even some of the old street lamps have been put back thanks to the investments from the WP. Before Martinez was swallowed by the industrial harbour, even before it was part of Revachol, long before Terminal B was erected here, the Pines built it as a resort for its Revacholian employees. A company getaway, for a weekend or a summer holiday. Then came the revolution. But that's another matter.
With your help, hopefully, says her warm tone.
Everything. Right up to, but not including, trade secrets. First, you'd have to repeal the Emergencies Act of Trade in Elements. That gives me the right to silence. It's quite the octopus. Good luck is only kept in place by the vested interests of half the civilized world, including your own.
What the ma'am means is that the Emergencies Act and the RCM both get their authority from the coalition government.
You'd be shooting yourself in the foot, in other words.
But I am derailing us. You wanted to know about the strike. I believe the official title is Senior Labor Negotiator. In practice, I'm a grocery clerk. I relay the union's demands to Wild Pines and return with Wild Pines' counteroffer.
And how are the talks going?
They're not. That's the problem. The union stopped all negotiations a week ago, after that awful lynching took place. Now they won't even let me into the harbor. There's a 2-meter 20 racist behemoth blocking the gates. What can I say? The union employs a giant covered in tattoos. A racist giant. I guess that's part of their big tent organization now. Let's say I was not making the kind of progress I'd hoped for when I first arrived.
And when did you first arrive?
I arrived 3 weeks ago. Yes, in the middle of February. The bay was still partially frozen then. I prefer to do these things on site, like the RCM.
But the strike began in December.
I wasn't the original negotiator here. I took over after Mr. Gaumont hit a wall with Mr. Clare, the union boss. Mr. Clare refused to speak with Gaumont despite concessions he'd granted the union in prior negotiations.
Did you hit? Cat stares at something behind me. Like there's... Like, no, there's nothing there. It's fine.
This isn't the first time the union has gone on strike.
Heavens no. There have been 2 prior strikes. Both times the union won significant concessions, including overtime pay and a medical plan. This time their demands are more, I guess you could say,
Ludicrous even. It's meant.
Mr. Clare told him to... How did he put it? Fuck off, midget. Gaumont is short of stature, you see. Keep in mind, this is a negotiator Mr. Clare has worked with before, and who was more than fair with him and the union. There are leaflets everywhere, and banners. What did they say again? Every worker, a member of the board.
Most of the workers probably don't know what that means.
Then you might also like their other slogan. Demand democracy. Personally, I agree. It lacks the pizzazzo of every worker a member of the board. It's quite simple, you see. Every time the Wild Pines Group makes a decision about what? About anything really, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, they are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group.
An opening gambit, surely.
So I hoped. But this type of opening is usually followed by a more reasonable offer. I have yet to hear one. Just the same nonsensical slogan repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
And now, people are getting lynched, I hear.
That's a bit excessive.
Behind the
There's only
whirling
one
in
person
rags.
so far.
A disastrous situation if there ever was one.
Excuse me, from whom did you hear about this lynching?
I first heard it from the boyer at the gates. The one whose very name advertises his aversion to work. I think he said it was, "Call me mañana." Everard Clare is a man of the utmost integrity. If you can say one thing about him, it's that he always puts the interests of the workers first.
She's being sarcastic. Don't take her performance literally.
Of course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. I imagine he has a thick, viscous goo where you and I have blood. He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen, and I deal with men like him for a living. If there is anyone more venal, more irredeemably nepotistic, then it's his twin brother, Edgar. Yes, Edgar looks exactly like his brother, except for that lazy eye. He also talks exactly like Everard does, and when one's term as foreman is up, the other takes over. It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see, with a funny little switcheroo. While in office, they've embezzled God knows how much of their workers' dues. The Débardeurs Union was once a perfectly normal institution. 20 years ago, anyway. It must not have been easy to establish under the Emergency Act, but they did it. I can respect that. Organised labour at its best, as they say. Then something happened in the local chapter elections. The brothers Clare came and transformed it into a...
Something.
How do you say?
A mob. The Debarders are a crime syndicate. Sad as it may be, I suspect we'll be forced to cooperate with them.
Refreshingly honest, officer. The company has tried appeasing in the past, but I'm afraid our concessions have only emboldened Everard and his brother. And your opinion, Detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person, you see. Would you say the Debarders Union is... Indeed, and a hungry one. Sadly, Wild Pines have cooperated with what amounts to a crime syndicate for 2 decades. However much you feed the leech always hungers. Everard Clare is a man...
She's being sarcastic.
Of course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen. Have you seen him? Edgar looks exactly like... It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see. With the Debarders organize labor at its best.
A mob. The Debarders are a crime...
Refreshingly honest, officer. And your opinion, Detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person. Why do you think so?
What she calls corruption is simply an aesthetic category.
Point taken. But enough about Everard. What else can I do for you? I'm glad you asked. There was a woman, the previous forewoman of the Union. She disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore. Or coming to work. Ever. End of story. Indeed. The company suspects foul play, but there's nothing they could do. It was a Union matter. The point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Yeah. We are playing a communist engineer. I think it's important that we... So the Clares, they're obviously parasites on the worker's body. They are not doing, what's in the best interest of the revolution. And they need to be dealt with in some way. Or at least we shouldn't become an instrument for them. Hopefully, we'll be able to avoid that.
Of course. How else can I help?
1 second. We're just going to refill the old water bottle. There. We're set.
Quite a few things, I'm afraid. The information I'm to share with you includes sensitive trade secrets. For the sake of my employer, I have to ask for your names and badge numbers.
Of course, ma'am. We should have introduced ourselves. I am Lieutenant Kitsuragi, from Precinct 57, and this is my colleague from Precinct 41. I'm afraid he doesn't...
How curious. Why is that, Detective?
Awkwardness washes over the conversation. The woman doesn't like this turn of events.
I see. So, are you saying you lost your badge during the course of this episode? Oh dear. I do believe you, naive as that may sound. I simply can't imagine what you gain by faking such a condition.
As I said, ma'am, his technique may be...
Of course, I sympathize, but I'm afraid...
Hang on. She's a professional negotiator. She should be open to some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement. She's a negotiator. Just float a favor at her. Insinuates.
I will be frank with you. If I'm going to break protocol, I need to be able to justify it to my superiors. They're going to want to see something very tangible.
You're in, but expect her to drive a hard bargain.
Reports from inside Terminal B suggest it's a hub for the local drug trade. This is an open secret in Martinez. The Union controls the terminal, so it goes to reason. The company has tried looking into this matter before, to no avail. Perhaps someone with your authority and resources might turn over the right stones, or you can recover your badge, though...
Detective, a word in private before we continue.
Mazovian socio-economics. 0.000% of communism has been built. Evil child-murdering billionaires still rule the world with a shit-eating grin. All he has managed to do is make himself sad. He is starting to suspect Krasmazov fucked him over personally with his socio-economic theory. It has, however, made him into a very smart boy with something like a university degree in truth. Instead of building communism, he now builds a precise model of this grotesque, duplicitous world.
Nice.
This is not going quite as I hoped it would, Detective. Honestly, I was expecting you to use your unorthodox technique to keep her off balance, and not volunteer us to be her henchman. This woman is running circles around us. She might have known about your misplaced...
He doesn't let it show, but there is a limit to how much the consequences of your unprofessional behavior can cost the investigation. Maybe this is all her plan. She might have heard about you.
I wouldn't go that far. Her reaction did come off as sincere to me. I think she's just quick to adapt. She's a professional, after all. Oh, that would be fantastic, but do we have the time? The world is large, and your badge is 8 by 6 centimeters.
The situation might have changed drastically.
You could request a new one from the station, but that would literally take months. I'm sure you will, Detective. No. If there is reasonable suspicion, we must investigate. Otherwise, she could claim we are siding with the Union, or that we are on their take. What I propose is, we ask her, then we investigate, briefly. But do not share the outcome of this investigation with her. We tell her it's done, and demand for her information on the lynching.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? It's quite straightforward. Someone is using Terminal B to smuggle raw ingredients from the Samar and Isola into Revachol with the Union's blessing. Wild Pines has suspected it for years.
Yeah.
Ingredients for what, ma'am?
Meth and dextroamphetamine, GBL, and various synthetic psychedelics. Honestly, it might be quicker to say what you can't make from the stuff. Yes. After they clear the terminal, we lose track. The actual production is taking place at various sites in and around Jamrock Quarter, north of here.
Wild Pine seems to be well apprised of the local drug trade, ma'am. Do you mean to say the Union also produces the product? Sells drugs, I mean?
We're in logistics. It's our business to know. And no. As far as the company knows, the Union does not produce it. They transport the ingredients, for a cut, Yes, but you won't get anything out of Evrart and the Dockworkers Union. Still, every chain has its weak link.
The handoff. The motor lorries at the roundabout.
Unlikely, officer. I'm talking about the lorries. Once the ingredients reach Jamrock, they're distributed to a network of local manufacturers, well beyond our grasp. But in transit, they may be vulnerable. Perhaps you've noticed that a number of lorries are tangled in a traffic jam at the roundabout just now. Interview the drivers who are still hanging about. One of them might be waiting for a crucial shipment. I'll be explicit. If you find this drive...
Uncovering Union secrets could also give you an upper hand when dealing with them.
We did. On more than one occasion. Apparently, there's some sort of inter-precinct disagreement about whose jurisdiction this area falls under.
We know the company has launched its own probe into the Union's alleged involvement. We also know it's come up empty. It's not just the RCM. No one's been able to find any hard evidence.
Well, here's your chance, officers. No. We asked East Motor Track to raise the drawbridge. The road company is a partner of one of our subsidiaries. However, this is a limited time opportunity. Once the complaint has been processed by the Trade Committee, they'll have no choice but to lower the drawbridge, and the operation will continue. Thousands of litres of raw ingredients will pour onto the streets of Revachol. Not the east across the river, but the west. The vulnerable, the weary.
Well, at least this solves one mystery.
What is that, Lieutenant?
Why I had to call East Motor Track and beg them to open a drawbridge for me. I'd wondered since I first drove in, on my motor carriage.
I am sorry for the inconvenience, Lieutenant Kisaragi, but we need them trapped here. This is a unique opportunity. I'm sure you understand. How do you think they're financing this strike? There are thousands of unpaid dock workers going strong for the 4th month straight.
There was a shakedown of local businesses preceding the strike. Many were squeezed to bankruptcy to fund it.
With all due respect to these desert cacti, the contents of a few cash registers cannot provide for 2,000 men. The local businesses can scarcely provide for themselves. Precisely. Smuggled out of that very gate at night, most likely, then loaded onto lorries and driven to Jamrock. You simply need to find one driver who will open up to you. Yes? Excellent. According to my reports, there are at least 3 lorry drivers lingering near the roundabout.
Yeah.
Hopefully one of them will know something. It may come to nothing, or it may just blow the case wide open. I can keep the drawbridge up for a few more days at least. You should have the time you need. In the meantime, let me know if there's any other way I may be of assistance. This reality.
Yes, reality is your side case. An experimental side case.
How truly curious. A sort of philosopher detective.
Are they now?
A deep synthesis. I'll assist you however I can then. Go ahead. Ask.
All right, we're in. I know these all look good, but begin with the first, okay?
We're in Martinez, baby. A casual term of endearment popular among the 50-plus crowd. It's a disco holdover, pay it no heed. Aren't we all?
She refers to your corresponding ages.
Martinez is a district of Revachol. A very small district tucked away near the industrial harbour, north of the 881 and Jamrock. You would be excused for not knowing about it. Unimportant, they say. Forgotten, even. Shelled to smithereens during the Revolution. It has its charms, just not this time of year. I'm not a good ambassador. I've only been here once before, as a teenager. Not a lot has changed. There are ruins, a terminal, fishing boats, reeds, boys with boxy shoulders. As I told you, Martinez used to be a province, a workers' resort before the city swallowed it and the artillery did its part. Now the Reeds are the real star of the show here. The further down the coast, the wilder it gets. It's not really a sea, it's the Bay of Revachol, and the bay feeds into the ocean. Yes, we're on an island in an ocean, the world's largest body of water, the Insulindic.
Known to the early Revacholians as Les Immensités Bleues, the blue immensities, vast, lukewarm and unknowable, flowing in and out of sight.
Caillou, as you already know. Imagine a pebble. A smoothed-over pebble amidst a great blue sea, misshapen, cracked. The cracks are the river Esperance. We're in the delta of this river, on the 6th branch, the Martinez distributary.
It is clear this pebble is of enormous value to her, and to humanity at large.
Revachol? Revachol is what you call a city. The great kind.
As if it's self-explanatory, beyond patriotism, a fact.
History detective. They built this city to resolve history. Our part in it, at least. Our centuries. The nations of the Occident, or migrant workers from Seminine and Ile Marat, depending on your creed. In the DeLorean century, 380 years ago, they say it's where the terrible questions of our time will be answered. The tensions are highest, the fault lines deepest. By that I mean conflicts. Ideological conflicts. The stuff of men.
Yeah.
We are standing on a fertile, self-sufficient island able to sustain up to 200 million people in the middle of the Insulindic Ocean, the world's connective tissue. It's where the money is. Oh, we're quite a way off. About 22 kilometers from the center of the world. That soldering iron is the Bank of the World building. The bottom floors are Insiacom. Coalition government, Insulindian Mission Command.
Silence. She lowers her hand. The water, the light. It's as though you're seeing it for the first time. There is no recognition, only the immensity of the sea and the cold radiating from it.
We are where we are. I have no truer answer to give, unfortunately.
This is one thought you need to complete. Where are you?
Was there something else you wanted to know?
This has been informative. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure my memory-impaired partner has many more questions to ask, about even more fundamental aspects of... Might I suggest...
No? Hey. God, you're such a big...
You're back. It's quite straightforward.
ingredient...
Meth and dextroamphetamine. Yes.
Wildpine seems to be well apprised of the local drug trade, ma'am. Do you mean to say the Union also...
We're in logistic. Yes.
Wildpine seems to be...
We're in logistic. Yes, but you...
The handoff. The motor lorry.
Unlikely officer. Perhaps you've noticed that a number of lorries at... I'll be explicit.
Uncovering Union secrets.
We did.
We know the company has launched...
Well, here's your chance. No. This is a limited thousands of...
Well,
What is that, Lieutenant?
why I had to call East Motor Tract.
I am sorry for the inconvenience, Lieutenant. How do you think that...
There were...
With all due respect... Precisely. Smuggled out of that very gate at night, most like. Yes? Excellent. It may come... In the meantime, let me know if there's any other way I may be of this...
Yes, an experiment.
How truly curious.
Are they now?
A deep synthesis.
All right, we're in.
We're in Martinez, baby. a casual term of...
She
Martinez, you would be excused for not knowing. I'm not a good... As I told you, Martinez, it's not... Yes.
known to the early rivers, vast, lukewarm.
Caillou,
It is clear, and to humanity at large,
Revachol, the great
as if it's
history detective. The nations of the Occident. In the DeLorean sense, they say it by that time. We are standing on a fertile, self-sufficient island, able... I think it's fair to say so. 22 kilometers.
silence. The water, there is no recognition, only the immensity of the sea. And she observes your eyes scanning the horizon. This is one thought you need to complete.
Was there something else you wanted to...
This has been informative. Might I suggest not asking them all right now? Miss...
Absolutely. My commitment here is long-term.
Oh, of course not. You are already diligent for getting this far. And diligent boys remember where they left off.
Well,
Indeed. I'm always at your service. These are unimportant times, Detective. You and I were born after the dust had settled. 1,000th of a second too late. For the big time. The revolution. It's quite easy. Every 100 years or so, our species gets together to decide what's next, who gets shot in the head, and who gets the mineral rights. It's a real kerfuffle. Why, of course. We're talking Duke out Central. Full swing intraspecies warfare. No, I would say the apes were neutral. On the other hand,
It takes time for the apes to change and work. Perhaps what happened here was part of that time and part of that work.
those would be the communists. Generally speaking, 40 million people got shot in the head during the World Revolution. But the communists, they all got shot in.
She's not gloating. It's a relieved celebration.
Oh, and the anarchists too. They shot them well.
She likes the totality of it.
Did they ever? Before they got shot themselves, they shot 2 million people.
This does not represent the...
Don't worry. Krasmazov shot 15 million people in the head. Oh, lots of people. Even the king got shot in the head, or thrown beneath a horse, or drowned. Accounts differ. It was unceremonious. Just the real king abdicated and lived out a long and productive life as a venture capitalist in Grad. I prefer the term risk-averse. King Guillaume was nobody's fool. He could smell a PR disaster brewing, so he got out alive, and his nephew Fricelle got shot in his place. Him and tens of thousands of his wonderfully fascist kingsmen. It was a wild time. Those would be the
She's not gloating.
Oh, and
She likes the totality of it.
indeed. They piled them in mass graves in Ozon. And, well, did they ever? Before they got shot themselves, they shot 2 million people.
Yeah, it was a kerfuffle, all right.
Yes. The Insulindian deluge, they call it. Yes. An acute thiamine deficiency can be exacerbated by alcoholism. Exacerbated? Oh, lots of people. Even the real king abdicated and lived out a long and... About head shooting? The liberals got the mineral rights. And by mineral rights, I mean everything. Liberals are usually middle-class people, Detective. Or the remaining gentry. The beneficiaries of the pre-revolutionary. Some were rich enough to stay with the Constitution, with monarchy. Big mistake. Others bet on the revolution. They were called the ultras, or ultra-liberals. They fared well. They didn't win so much as survive. We were the last ones standing when the war ended. Everyone else got shot in the head, remember?
We. She's one of them. Of course.
to foreign intervention, the Coalition. Those people really took the mineral rights. The Liberals took everything that wasn't nailed to the ground. The Coalition took the ground. The ocean, the laws, and the people. The Coalition of Nations. Grad, Mesk, Vesper, Messina, Oranje, and Sur-la-Clay, the armed center of the world. They landed here and ended the revolution. It was the moralist thing to...
There is bitterness in her voice, tempered with understanding. She is critical, but ultimately understands the cause.
The moralists believe in keeping everything exactly the way it is. They believe in mineral rights, and not shooting people in the head. At least not in the same manner and volume as the others do. They are the long-standing provisional rulers of Revachol now, the coalition government.
Sleep, okay.
This is their zone of control. They embolden the RCM with crumbs of the same law they took. Technically speaking, you are a moralist.
The color of moralism is blue. The official motto of Moral Intern, or Moralist International, is a blue forget-me-not, a piece of grey sky. Unofficial. For a moment, there was hope.
A devout man of the center. Hard to come by. It's good to have someone who takes a moderate approach to head shooting. In your life, the Liberals got the mineral rights. They didn't win.
We.
To foreign intervention. The Liberals took the coalition of...
There is bitter...
The Moralists, at least not in the same... This is their...
The color of moralism is blue. The official motto of Moral Intern, or Moralist International, is...
Of course. Not easy to be moderate about head shooting in your line of work. The turn of the century revolution? Don't answer it. The revolution began in '02 on the Isla of Grad,
This is
though by the
super
end nearly the whole world had gotten
Amazing
involved.
writing in this game, generally speaking.
It wasn't a who, but a what. A pandemic of Zarat, a particularly virulent prion disease, which the authorities in Grad proved unable to contain. Then Mazov came along and overthrew the government. It made people overthrow their governments. Indeed, Zarat is a highly infectious microorganism that destroyed brain tissue. The actual causes of the revolution were material. The pandemic only provided the spark. From Revachol and Grad? Not far. The world managed to cauterize itself. Mazov's government was overthrown in '08, and the coalition crushed the Revachol commune 2 years later. It was the end. Why? You and I, officer. Our lives in the zone of control.
Something tells you her life and yours are not that similar. Maybe it's because she has a boat and you have that necktie? A pair of pants?
No doubt. But we share the same time and position on the planet's crust. That counts for more than you think. A city-state divided into free market zones under the everlasting interregnum of the Coalition of Nations. And you, of course, the citizens' militia.
The clatter of typewriter keys fills the main hall of the reappropriated silk mill. Precinct 41. Chad Tilbrook presses enter. Outside, Officer Elfboy Williams slams the door of an armored motor carriage.
The Zone of Control is the third incarnation of Revachol, after the failure of the Suzerain and the Commune. Modernity. They developed the marvels of the inter-easlary communication, telematic milieus, radiation, colored plastics. Meanwhile, in Revachol West, the aftermath continues for the 5th decade.
51 minus 8 equals 43.
Time flies. The 20s saw a decade of urban war, west of the river leveled, offshore platforms in flames. Still, it's regarded as an improvement on what came before. 08 to 19 was simply hell. The 30s? Things settled down in the 30s. Revachol East transformed itself into the world's largest tax haven, with the international community's blessing. For the first time in a long time, it seemed like things were going somewhere. No, it was a market mirage fueled by cocaine and quantitative easing. The 40s dispelled it like a cold splash, an Isla-wide hangover, you might say. And here we are. Welcome to reality, baby.
From the looks of it, the 50s haven't been much better for the zone of control. You can see it in her eyes. Days slipping away.
I've no right to be dissatisfied. This shirt is Barbara Muscova, this raincoat is impervious to rain and is guaranteed for 100 years. My daughters will wear it. No, it's just... we could have had so much more. Every one of us. If only we played it right. Good question. What would you have done differently? And I asked you, past-less detective of the Citizens Militia, what insight has acute encephalopathy given to you? So a quarter of humanity simply lost their minds. And how would you stop a prion, a complex folding protein, unlife, with the technology 50 years ago? Always. That's the can't-do attitude that truly defines...
Opinions expressed.
And what is your...
My position, ma'am? My parents got ripped to shreds in the revolution. I would have gone the same way. I was saved by being 2 years old. That's my position. The abattoir.
Understandable. They are what they are, anyway. Enough sentimentality.
Not so fast. Who is she in all this? Ask her who she is. She owes you an answer. She won't maneuver her way out of this one.
I am the vilest of the vile. A traitor. I am an ultra. Yes. I am the nether creature of the Forbidden Swamp. I pushed the king under a shit wagon and betrayed the revolution. My kind surrendered the nation to financial colonists. I can see you thought we'd gone extinct. After all, no sane person identifies as an ultra-liberal anymore. Not in broad daylight. You're a centrist at heart. A real moralist, no? Tell me, now that
In her green eyes, you see a mixture of truth and self-satire. Decades of guilt and pride.
A devil, who being of great charm and guile, sneaketh into the homes of the godly.
That dialect is ubi sunt. You recognize the quote from somewhere. A play written way back in the Franco-Nigerian century.
Ah, maybe you remember more than you let on. Despite whatever brain damage the alcohol may have inflicted. I hope so. I hope we are able to continue as friends despite my scaly bulk. And the insanity, bloodshed, and transfer of wealth that took place here. It was not the plan all along. When the dust settled, the Liberals were the only ones left to clean up the mess. By virtue of their survival, they were handed enormous power to shape the future. This was all our last generation managed. With due respect to our overlords, the eternal caretaker government that keeps Martinaise a monument to the efficacy of its artillery, I would not have relinquished sovereignty to the Coalition. Not here in Martinaise, and not in the Stella Maris or Delta Beachheads either. If not for my own sake, then for my daughters. We had an obligation to defend our sovereignty. We should have burned the whole Isola down rather than let them have it.
Dark orange flames reflect in her green eyes. An oil fire.
Perhaps. My intellectual vanity will be my undoing.
You're no dummy yourself.
A smart boy getting smarter, one basic term of reality at a time. Yes, I suppose I am. But I...
Seditious talk, man.
Yes. Whatever else I am, I'm also a mother. And a wife. Now, shall we return to reality? A bird? A Svenicid? A flightless bird of the polar regions? Of course you're not, my dear. I'm just terrible at guessing games. Ah! This is the Pier or two. A pre-revolutionary tenement. Old buildings are called tenements, you see. And new buildings, bâtiments. After, les bâtiments nouveaux. But 33A and 33... This one used to be 8 to 10 stories tall. A real high-rise by the standards of the last century. Built to mirror the skyscrapers across the bay in the Delta. That was before the war, of course. Mostly the urban middle class, I believe. This was once primo real estate, before the cannons lopped 4 or 5 stories off. Splat, splat. Wonderful. The girl in the old lady rags. Looks like a sullen and rebellious member of a teen infraculture. Yes, you and I belong to the supraculture. We're common, the herd. The music on the radio, the food in the chain restaurant, those are all too popular for the girl in the old lady rag. She prefers a fantasy world, an infraculture with its own dress code and vernacular.
Okay, we're gonna take a break there. Since played actually